Okay, I'll cut that out. Hey guys, welcome back. So it's taken me just a minute. I had to regain my thoughts. I had mentioned before wait a second, my name is Meg. Welcome back to Haven Hill is what I should have said. And you're in my kitchen today with me. But I needed to take a minute to just gain my thoughts, where I'm headed, making sure I'm staying true to what I feel just very compelled to share in this space. And I wanted to try to figure out a little bit with my vlogging camera. Still have not figured that out yet. So I'm actually using my professional camera again. It's fantastic quality. It just takes way more forethought and setup. But anyway, you're in my kitchen and I wanted to start a series of sourdough videos. There's so many sourdough videos out there. Feel free to go to any of those. But after last night, so last night was the very first sourdough workshop that I held with a local business here called Lavender and Lily. They're my favorite boutique. She has amazing clothing, but she also has a really fantastic kitchen section. So we collaborated and I hosted it there at her, or she hosted it as far as it was her building, but I went and I taught 8 women how to do sourdough. Sourdough is not challenging, it's just a bit of a learning curve. So after that, there were so many fantastic questions that were asked that I thought I would start a really simple, short series of sourdough videos where I'm taking you through this step by step. But each video is just gonna be one portion of it. One of the things that was so frustrating to me when I learned many years ago about sourdough was I would have to watch these 45-minute videos and then I would have to get to where I needed to be in the video because I didn't need to watch everything, especially the more that I learned. So my goal in this space is to do that for you, to give you these short snippets. So the very first video is about feeding your starter. So this is my sourdough starter, and as I told the women last night in the workshop, I wanted so badly to take the camera along, but it just did not work out. But as I told the women there in the workshop, is that it is not a great sourdough jar unless it's filthy. At least for me, because you are feeding it often. So I'm gonna walk you through the step-by-step process. There were a lot of questions about why you feed and how you feed and all those different things. So I'm going to walk you through that. So let's go. So this is, you're going to need some sort of vessel to keep your sourdough in. I really like these flip lids. And of course you need to name your sourdough. Mine is fondly named Linus. My kids named it. And you just want to be able to put in here your 2 ingredients, which is flour and water, easily. So this is mine. I have this much left. This is my giant discard jar. It's a gallon jar. I will fill this as I just have the extra discard. Now, when you're getting ready to feed your starter, in order to keep it so you don't have a massive amount of active starter, because one loaf of bread, sourdough bread, takes about 50 grams for most average recipes, and 50 grams is not even a half a cup, so you don't need very much on hand ready to go at all times. And the more your sourdough starter grows, the more you have to feed it every day or every other day or as often as you're going to feed your starter. So does that make sense? I hope it does. Let me repeat it one more time. The more you have that is active, the more you have to feed it, which means you're using more water and particularly more flour. So for this, when I have this much, I'm not sure if you, this camera does not automatically focus. I'm gonna put my fingers there. I have this much, it's about 1 inch of active sourdough starter. So I need that with the ingredients that I'm getting ready to put in. I need it to double. So when you are feeding your sourdough starter, what you're essentially doing, I'm going to use non-scientific terms because I know when I was getting started, I found all the scientific terms incredibly frustrating and quite honestly annoying. I don't anymore, but I'm just gonna use super simple terms. Basically, this is a living organism. Not really, but it is a slowly fermented sourdough starter, which makes a slow fermented bread. And while it sounds ancient or weird or whatever, well, it is ancient. While it sounds bizarre to us, it can be traced back thousands of years when people just didn't have yeast. So essentially what this is going to do, it's going to collect the good bacteria, we all need good bacteria, the good yeast, and it's going to help your bread rise by the sour portion of the sourdough starter. So how you feed it is, like I told you, 60 grams of water, 60 grams of flour. My little buddies like coming in here and asking me questions when I'm doing that. So I've told you before, in this space is very real. So this is approximately a half a cup. I know that because I'm so used to doing it. Feel free to measure if you want. But again, the measurements when you're feeding your starter are not life and death, other than the fact that you want them to be about equal. So let's say that this is about 120 grams total in weight. You want that to basically double for each feeding. So if I had this halfway full and I was going to feed this jar, I would need to use a lot of flour and a lot of water. A home baker doesn't need to keep that much. If you were a commercial baker, you would be feeding yours a way more. So it's about a half a cup of flour. You're going to pour it right in your jar. And then about a quarter of a cup of water. And I have my water. I need 2 hands here. Again, I'm just eyeballing it. And the more, whoop, I went over. Not over on here, I went over on the table. And I know now from doing this so often for years that it's perfect. It's just not that much. And then what's gonna happen if you have a really active starter is this is within an hour. This will start bubbling and rising. And if you're lucky, it's gonna stay risen for a bit, which my starter is probably a little over a year old. I had to start over when we moved here. And I kind of had some failed attempts at it because I just had a baby and I just set it aside. But a year ago, I got back into it on an almost daily basis. So that's it. So remember, it was about here and it was almost perfect. So now it's here. And I know that this is going to rise approximately to the top, but not too much more. That's all you need. So now over the next 12 to 24 hours, this is going to rise, which is what you want it to do. It's activating it's activating, what is the correct term? I don't even know. It's just activating the dough so it's going to rise. The leaven, would that be right? It's activating it, and then it will be ready to either bake with in the morning, or when I can tell that it's done rising, or just sometime tomorrow. If I decide not to bake tomorrow, sometimes I will leave it on my counter for a day or two and not feed it if I can tell it's fine. Ideally, you do want to feed it every day or every other day. And if I decide to not bake tomorrow with this, I will pour half of this out into my discard jar, and then I will feed it again because I don't ever need more than this that is active and ready to go. So, recap, it's been fed 60 grams, 60 grams. So 60 grams of water is about a quarter of a cup. 60 grams of flour is about a half of a cup. This will now rise, and then once it's done risen, it'll fall back down. And when it falls back down is when it's ready to either be fed again or to be baked with. And if you bake with it, that essentially is your feeding. One of the questions that came up is, why do you call it discard? You call it discard because you just don't need to keep that much, and because you want it to stay active. Some people just throw it away. But there are so many recipes. I will link our family's favorite cracker recipe that you can do with it. You can do pizza crust with it. You can do there's brownies, banana bread. There's so many things that you can do with a discard. So that is why I keep my discard, but you also could just throw it away. Another reason though, if you do decide to throw yours away, why you wouldn't want to feed much more than this, unless you need a massive amount, is because you're going to throw half of it away. Okay, so there are so many recipes that you can find online for discard. Like I said, I will link mine. I wanted to show you this. I made this today. This is our family's favorite banana bread. It is not my recipe, so I will link that. We made it, I made it yesterday for the workshop, and my kids were so mad that I didn't make any for them, so I made this morning for them. I mentioned our family's cracker recipe. So the thing is, once you get the hang of this, it will become like second nature. In the very beginning, I was very meticulous about how I fed my starter. Well, now I know however much starter I have, it just essentially needs to double in order to be fed well. So that's what you do. And then if I'm not going to bake with it, I'll pour some out so I can stick to that same amount, so I'm not wasting a bunch of food. And because we do like doing things with our discard, I do like doing pizza crust and banana bread and crackers and different things. So this is essentially the basics of why and how you feed an already active starter. If you're trying to start your own starter, I'm not doing a video on that right now. That will take approximately a week, but you can also buy starters like dehydrated starters are very common right now, that you just need to rehydrate. If you are getting a starter from somebody, I recommend at least feeding it a few times so it can get acclimated to, this is going to sound so funny, but it gets acclimated to your house and your air and your bacteria and the temperature that you keep your house at. And while that might sound funny and weird to us, at one time it was just very, very normal. So, and then one more thing really quick, why even sourdough? Like, why is sourdough such a big deal? It's such a big deal because if you have gluten sensitivities or gluten intolerance, often you are fine with sourdough because there is the good bacteria and the fermentation, much like kombucha or anything that you might eat that might be fermented. Pickles, my kids love pickles. That good bacteria helps your gut so much. So for our family, I had 2 kids that have had gluten intolerance, not celiac. I have had kids that, well, one we suspected, but it ended up just being a just a very strong or bad gluten intolerance. She can now eat sourdough with no problem. And it's already, you don't have to feel as bad when you're eating it either, because while it is a carb, it's considered a good carb. Now, do you want to go eat an entire loaf in one sitting? No, probably not. That might make you still feel sick. But it's almost like the digestion process has already started for you. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that it's simple. Feel free to continue to message me any of your questions, and or message me. You can put comments below, or you can message me. My email is attached as well. And yeah, and we'll see you on the next one. So feel free to like this, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for the next installment of Sourdough Steps.